I was talking to a senator today, and I don't usually talk to senators, trying to suggest that you've really got to take on Black Lives Matter, the organization, of course, not the sentiment, and because it's that ideology that now controls the Democratic Party. And that ideology is profoundly racist. It judges people by the color of their skin. It proposes to break up society based on race. That stuff is racist. And it's very important to say that, because at the moment, among many Americans, BLM still has the high moral ground. It feels like it's on the right side when it comes to race. And so it's very important, I think, for our leaders to stand up and say, no, it's on the absolute wrong side. It's against the Declaration and all people are created equal. It's racist. And I think that has to be said. Otherwise, we let their racist ideology stand. It gets into the White House and it finds our ways, into our laws and into our values. And it will destroy the American way of life. So it has to be confronted.
Tom, at americaisgood.us, you've got a couple of things up there. First off, the first way that we need to approach how to answer this question is to vote, right? Is to vote by supporting the notion that America is a fundamentally good place, and that we should continue improving on the institutions that we have already in place. And on the proposition that all men are created equal, all people are created equal, and all people have a fundamental right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, not based on artificial divisions.
Well, to that I say a resounding yes.
There you go.
Now what's your
now my question. I mean, I wanted to make sure that I gave you a chance to get in there on that. But you have a couple of different other things at americaisgood.us. You've got a petition up. Tell us a little bit about the petition and what it is that you're trying to do with this petition.
Well, we're trying to call attention to the framing that I've proposed here. Right? We're trying to get people to think that the only question is whether America is good or it isn't. And we want to take attention away from personalities, from policies, from the virus, even the riots, right?
Right.
Those are likely to play a significant role, but none of them get to this central problem, because the enemy, and we ought to call it the enemy, that has taken over the Democratic Party wants to destroy America because it thinks America is bad. And so it's important, I think, to keep people focused on the threshold question, the fundamental, the question that's really at root, and not be distracted by other stuff that's frankly much less important. So that's the thinking. Well, go on, Ed. Okay. I'll let you. Well, I'll let you direct me.
Well, hey, this is a conversation, man. So whatever, however this goes, I'm good with this. I do want to point out something that I think is fundamental in your argument here for the petition. By the way, americaisgood.us/petition. That's where you can find this. You can sign up for it. It's a proposal to asking President Trump and the U.S. Congress to formally declare the first Tuesday of every November America is Good Day. But this is the part that I think is key. Whereas free elections can only occur among friends who share a belief in the goodness of America. I mean, I think that this is something fundamental that we have lost through all sorts of different possible reasons that we've lost it. But in order to have free elections, in order to have functional elections at all, Tom, you have to have everybody buying into that system, right? I mean, you have to, I mean, the only way that you can do this is that everybody buys into the system and everybody buys into whatever results that it produces. And we haven't seen that of late. We certainly haven't seen it over the last 4 years. And that is the problem that's getting worse. And I think that is maybe the big key in your petition drive right there.
Well, it's it's certainly key to what I'm trying to say. What you're getting at here is a society to function, a society to, for the losers in an election to accept the results, requires that all the people, or most of the people in the society, agree on justice, agree on the ends of society. So, for example, during the Civil War, one side wanted slavery to grow, the other side wanted it to contract. Well, that's a difference of ends, and ends cannot be negotiated. There's no compromise. If we're heading to the same place, we can compromise as to how to get there, how fast. But when we're going to different places and opposite places, there's no basis to compromise, and that's why our politics is as divisive as it is, and people aren't playing by the rules. And in this case, the issue is not slavery, of course, but the end that the left, the radical left, which, as I say, is now controlling the Democratic Party, where it wants to go is a society where there is outcome parity among identity groups. So by which I mean all identity groups would be equal with respect to income and power, but not just income and power. All identity groups, would have the same number of CEOs proportional to their representation in society, but also the same number of criminals and the same number of heart attacks, right? That any difference along a wide spectrum of areas, any differences are ipso facto evidence of racism. As the founder of the anti-racism movement said, when I see racial disparities, I see racism and only racism. And that society, that understanding of justice, just cannot exist with a free society where we let individuals pursue happiness as they see fit. So like in the Civil War, we have different ends.
So Tom, I mean, I'm just about old enough to remember how some of this stuff was playing out in the 1970s, right? I was a teenager during that period of time, towards the end of the Vietnam War. Well, towards the end of the draft, I would say. We had a lot of these same debates, right? I mean, you had a lot of these same, it wasn't Black Lives Matter. The Black Panthers were a organization that was about, well, it was really more about building community, I think, in the beginning. But certainly we're arguing for, set-asides, cutouts, separate, separate enclaves of different groups. We moved past that. I mean, we really did for a while anyway. It seems that we went through this whole thing at that particular point in time, and that it seemed to have been resolved, and now it's back. I mean, am I remembering that correctly, or was that 1960s, 1970s phase of identity politics different than what we're seeing right now?
I don't think it was fundamentally different. I'm not sure it ever abated. It's been hidden because it was after the riots and public playing out in the 70s. It went behind university walls, right? And we tended not to see it. One of the blessings, if you can call it that, of the riots is that this identity politics, which, as you rightly say, I think it actually goes back much farther than the 60s. There's a strain of thought that starts much earlier. But it went behind university walls. And then with the riots and the prominence of BLM, it came out into the public. And we could see it. And if we read the BLM mission statement, we could see that they were not just Marxists, but against family, against religion. They were against all the values that undergird the American way of life. But I tell you, there's one big difference between today, there are many differences, in the 60s and the 70s. Then we had my father's generation. My father's generation fought in World War II, and they had no doubt about the goodness of America. We don't have that generation. We have my generation, which was raised in the 60s in the Vietnam War and raised with, all the questions about the goodness of America. So whether we have enough people in America that still believe in America's goodness, that are willing to fight to reclaim that America, we'll see. I don't know.
It's a great point. It really is a really great point. Well, Tom Klingenstein, thank you so much for being with us. AmericaIsGood.us. Is there any other place that we can promote here while you're on the air? Anything else that you're working on that we can let people know about?
Well, two things. When my next play, I'm a playwright, so when my next play comes out, Ed, I'm gonna seek some plugging from you.
Absolutely.
But the other thing, there I'm being a little facetious. But when your viewers go to AmericaIsGood.us, I gave a long speech. It's long, 17 minutes. But if you want to get a kind of general overview of at least how I understand this election, I suggest you take a look.
Well, I think we will. And by the way, the next time you have a play, absolutely, let's talk about it. Come on back here. We'll talk about your play and do some promotion here. That sounds like fun, actually.
Well, good. Well, thank you, Ed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom Klingenstein, for being with us today. And great guest, great talk. And AmericaIsGood.us. That's where you have to go, AmericaIsGood.us. And Tom has been a fine guest.